If you really want a resilient and robust strategy, I think you need to incorporate sustainability within that. It also provides you opportunities you might not have thought about before. So sustainability strategy, sustainable strategy overlap. They're not the same thing. And I think where we're seeing some of the best companies is they're really being very strategic about how they bring those two together and make sure they inform each other.
The moment business gets interesting is usually the moment it gets complicated. New technology, shifting markets, sustainability pressures, global uncertainty. That's when strategy stops being a textbook subject and becomes very real. And that's exactly where today's conversation begins. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of School to Startup, brought to you by Tracxn, a private market intelligence platform that's been supporting the global university ecosystem for over 12 years. Through our university partnerships, we work with institutions driving innovation and entrepreneurship, and this series highlights the academic leaders making that happen. I'm Harish, your host today. Joining us today is Professor Glenn from Melbourne Business School, where he is a professor of business strategy and MBS Foundation Chair of Sustainability and Business. Professor Glenn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Harish. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. To start off, can you tell us a bit about your journey and what first led you into academia? Was academia always the plan, or did you just keep asking difficult questions until someone finally gave you an office?
So it's a bit of both, actually. I have academics in my family, but I'd been working for a variety of consulting companies in the Washington, D.C. area, ending up working as a non-lawyer in the trade law practice at a law firm called Dewey Ballantine. And throughout that process, and particularly towards the end where I was working with boards and C-suites, I kept feeling that the questions they brought us in to help answer weren't the really important questions. And the easiest path to being able to ask those questions really was academia. So I did a PhD at the University of Michigan. And someone once said the great luxury of academia is, in what other profession do you get to wake up and ask, what do I want to learn about this morning? And I mean, that can sound very ivory tower, but I think if you're disciplined, it isn't. It's this opportunity to step back, think about questions that haven't necessarily surfaced for people yet, and ideally bring knowledge to folks that they didn't know they needed. So that was part of what brought me into academia. The other part was we don't have to bring answers. And actually, I think at our very best, we don't bring answers. We're not McKinsey, we're not BCG. Those folks you go to for answers. I think when we're at our best, academics help people ask better questions and give them the tools to answer those questions on their own. And so it was the chance to do that really brought me into academia. And so I've been an academic for several decades, been here at Melbourne Business School for 8 years now, was the founding director of our Center for Sustainability in Business. And it's exciting to work with leading companies in the country, to work with fantastic students, have great colleagues, to keep pushing ideas forward. So that's been my journey.
Very interesting. Your work today sits at the intersection of strategy and sustainability. So when people hear the word sustainability, they often think of it as a separate agenda from business strategy. So how do you look at that relationship?
Yeah. So I, my core belief, and this is what I found through research and through working with companies across the world, is it's the companies that think about sustainability as a strategic issue that end up performing better and also end up having more positive contribution. So you can think of, let's call it a sustainability strategy. And that's where a lot of companies start and where I think many people's minds go when we talk about sustainability. And that's things like, what are your targets for reaching net zero emissions? When are you going to reach them? How are you going to resource those, govern those, measure those, et cetera? Really important stuff. But where we really move the needle is in what I call sustainable strategy. So that's your strategy that incorporates all of the impacts, opportunities, and risks that come about because of sustainability, both things like physical effects of climate change, if you will, but also society's expectations for businesses. And, if you really want a resilient and robust strategy, I think you need to incorporate sustainability within that. It also provides you opportunities you might not have thought about before. So sustainability strategy, sustainable strategy overlap. They're not the same thing. And I think where we're seeing some of the best companies is they're really being very strategic about how they bring those two together and make sure they inform each other.
Very interesting. And also, a lot of founders talk about product growth and fundraising, right? But not enough talk about external results. So, what actually creates sustainable competitive advantage for a startup?
That's interesting. And I used to always struggle with that idea of, sustainable competitive advantage. And, that's the goal of strategy. That's what we've taught students for 3 decades. Because sustainable can mean over the long run, but it can also connect to all these things we were just talking about in terms of sustainability. And so I used to think that's really an unfortunate overlap of meaning. But now I think it's actually really fortunate because you can't keep a business profitable, generating returns, generating benefits for all of its stakeholders in the long run if you don't attend to those issues that we think about in terms of sustainability. And really, it's coming back to some basic disciplines that we have in strategy that we sometimes lose track of when we think about sustainability. One of the tools I brought over from strategy and sort of reworked, I call it the Sustainability Strategy Roadmap. And at its heart, it's just reminding people that whatever you do strategically, it's going to change the trade-off between your revenue, your risk, your revenue, your cost, your risk, and the impact you have on the outside world. And somehow we lose that discipline sometimes when we think about sustainability. But boy, if you really lock that in and you're really disciplined, it leads you to make choices you wouldn't make otherwise, that lead to better outcomes, that lead to you finding revenue opportunities you might not have looked for. And it moves it away from being compliant or we need to do this to something much more central. And in a lot of cases, we're seeing with small companies, they're coming about to fill a sustainability need that other companies have. So if you think about what are the problems around sustainability other companies have, if you can come up with a better solution, then that's a great business opportunity.
Amazing. You've also written about modularity, technological overlap, and how organizations adapt. So, which raises a very important founder question. When a startup says we are pivoting, how can you tell whether it's a smart strategic recombination or just a very expensive identity crisis?
Yeah, so it's that difference between pivoting and I think we've all seen those videos of cats chasing laser pointers on the floor. I think we've seen a lot of pivoting companies that resemble the cat more than a company. That really comes back to, I think, a question about how do you deal with uncertainty. And I think if you build that in from the beginning, rather than when you suddenly reach, oh boy, this isn't working, we need to pivot. The really sharp pivots are less likely, and even when they happen, they're much better grounded. And part of that is understanding that uncertainty is simply part of life, part of running a business, and really building it in from the beginning, not avoiding it. And I think we see, when I think of the companies I work with and I watch, so two people tend towards two ends of the spectrum. They're either a little bit risk averse, a little bit failure averse. So they're not making enough bets. They're not trying enough different things. So when they have to pivot, it's likely to be into something that they've really never played with before. Or it's companies putting all in bets. This works or we're doomed. And, really, if you just from the beginning step back and envision multiple futures, think about what do you have and what could you do that works across most or all of those. Build out a set of options around those. So you're always thinking about what decisions does this make possible once I know more about what the world's going to look like in a year. And pairing that with being really disciplined about when do we cut experiments off? When do we cut strategic initiatives off? And that balance gets you trying enough things, expanding your knowledge enough that you're well positioned to pivot without just dispersing your energy over too many things.
Very interesting. And zooming out a bit on universities. Universities today are expected to do much more than teach and publish. So they are also expected to help create founders, ventures, and real world innovation. So how do you see that role evolving?
That's a fantastic question. And I think we're definitely seeing a change over the last decade in expectations for universities. And I think it's a helpful change. Not that every faculty member is going to be working directly with business, working with founders, et cetera, but that the institution as a whole isn't. Some professors are. And I think it goes back to something we talked about earlier. It's not giving answers. It's giving people better questions. And so whether that is teaching my students who we want to be more entrepreneurial in their own companies, potential entrepreneurs, whether it's working with boards or just having a coffee with someone who's thinking about launching their own enterprise, it's giving them questions they didn't have before and the tools to come to their own answers. That, I think, is much more empowering than feeling like we've got the answers based on our research and what we've learned.
Amazing. So how is that MBS? What kind of initiatives or environments do you think genuinely help students and researchers or turn their ideas into ventures?
Yeah, so there's a really wide variety of programs at MBS, and I'd say we really try to make sure that we're building those opportunities throughout the curriculum. And I'll just feature one biodesign that one of my colleagues runs. And this is a year-long subject with students from the business school, but also from biomedical engineering, developing a medical device over a year, put broadly, and really starting with understanding what's the need, and then looking across the university to understand what intellectual property is here at the university, or are we aware of? How can we bring that together? And I think one of the things that's most powerful about that and similar programs is the interdisciplinarity that we bring. Because if all we have is managers who are good to talking with other managers, we're going to be pretty limited. And so that ability to have managers get comfortable working with scientists and engineers, and vice versa, I think is really, really powerful. And then it's just a very practical, hands-on experience, and it's one that has launched companies.
And on the other hand, for students and student founders, what opportunities do you think they are doing this right now in areas like climate, clean energy, and sustainable business?
It is a really interesting time when we think about sustainability, or really about innovation more broadly, the two topics we've been touching on. I think we're at an evolution point in terms of business and sustainability. It is becoming very broadly less its own separate issue and more integrated into key aspects of how a business operates. And there's a tension there, because if it's everyone's responsibility, it's really no one's responsibility. But at the same time, a single sustainability team is limited in what it can drive within a company. So I think we're seeing this opportunity, and I see this in students who take my Managing Sustainability for Strategic Advantage class. They're really good finance professionals. They've got a background in product development. They come out of marketing, and they want to know how to combine that with, extend that with, an understanding of what sustainability means for business. And not necessarily to go be a sustainability professional. Some of them do go that route, that's great. But some of it's, how can I find new market opportunities if I understand this? So I think there's a real opportunity-driven focus. In terms of innovation, there's enough disruption right now going on, whether it's AI, geopolitics, the energy transition. On the negative side, it makes a lot of very stressed people. But on the positive side, it does create that opportunity, I think, for freedom and creativity. There are a lot of new needs out there. There's the need to respond quickly to them, to create value in new ways. And so I think really it's a good time for students who want to make a difference in sustainability, or more broadly in innovating how value gets created.
Impressive. And just to end on a lighter note, when you're not thinking about strategy, sustainability, innovation, and governance, what do you actually enjoy doing?
Most of all, I enjoy being with my family, but also we've got 2 dogs who are great fun to work with. I enjoy reading, enjoy exercising, and really, I'm very fortunate. I live in Melbourne, the greatest city in the world, so there's something to do, almost every week.
Amazing. So for students watching this episode, especially those somewhere between classroom ideas and real world ambition, what advice would you give them?
It's the same advice I give to starting executives, starting academics, anyone. I think you want to learn how to do three things: learn to think, learn to learn, and learn to care. The rate of change is so fast that if you come into a degree wanting just to learn the specifics of how do I do this today, you're shortchanging yourself, because that's going to be gone and changed in 3 years, very likely. But if you learn to think and you keep that discipline and you learn how you best learn, that sets you up to navigate, even be excited about the disruption and changes that we're seeing. And when I say learn to care, I mean caring about yourself, but caring about those around you, and caring about your work. Because there will be a lot of times, no matter what it is you do, when, in the darkest moment, you go, why am I doing this? Does this matter? And if you connect it to something bigger than just the paycheck, right? If this is about how does it affect those around me, those I love, how does it advance the things I care about, the way I want to make a difference in the world, that really can keep you going through the tough moments.
I think that was a good one. So finally, where can our audience go to learn more about your work and follow what you're doing?
I'm on LinkedIn, and also the Melbourne Business School website are probably the best ways to track me.
Great. The link will be available in the comment section. Please do click on it and connect with Professor Glenn. That was a fascinating conversation on how strategy, innovation, and sustainability come together in the real world, and what that means for students, founders, and future business leaders as well. Professor Glenn, thank you so much for being part of this episode and for sharing your insights with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Great. And to everyone watching today, do like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you don't miss our upcoming conversation. See you in the next one.